Hi, Nick. The Transportation Safety Board says even though there were decades of experience between the engineers on board the locomotive, all three men misread the signals ahead of the site of the derailment, something the brother of one of the engineers killed in the crash is skeptical about. In the final moments before Via 92 derailed at a crossover just past King Road in Burlington, it was traveling at 67 miles per hour. That's over 100 kilometers per hour. The Transportation Safety Board says the signals told the crew to slow down to 15 miles per hour. TSB Regional Manager Rob Johnston says engineers Ken Simmons, Peter Snar, and Patrick Robinson all misperceived the signals leading up to the crossover.
We know the stop at Aldershot Station interrupted a flow of signals. This crew may have forgotten the signal at Waterdown Road.
There was also a crew on the track ahead, which may have distracted the engineers.
For them to be blowing the whistle at that location for the workers on the track, they also had to have the expectation that they were proceeding straight through.
Simmons, Snar, and Robinson died in the crash after the train hit a nearby building. Robinson's brother Ken saw the TSB's report this weekend and says it just doesn't add up.
For them to have seen the lights even before the stop at Aldershot and then to miss it again after Aldershot before the switch, again, so hard to digest.
Robinson says he still doubts whether the signals were working.
There's still no closure because we'll never know what happened in the cab.
Via 92 derailed at a point in the route where 99% of the time the train would have gone straight forward at track speed. And the TSB says that may be part of the reason why the crew didn't slow down. But without in-cab video cameras, it's impossible for them to know what happened inside the locomotive in the moments leading up to the crash. That's why the TSB is recommending Transport Canada implement mandatory in-cab video cameras. They're also recommending physical fail-safe train controls. That would stop a train if a signal is misread, similar to existing technology in parts of the U.S. that have been in place for more than 60 years.
The system that's in place down there that train would not be allowed to speed out of the station. It would have prevented this accident from happening.
The agency's final recommendation would require crashworthiness standards that apply to new locomotives also apply to rebuilt vehicles like Via 92. This could help save lives in the event of another derailment. Nick, something else we learned today is that train signals are misread in Canada about one time per month. And that's another reason why the Transportation Safety Board is recommending these fail-safe stops. Now, there's another question being raised by some of those that work in the industry today who wish to not be named. And that's why a 15-mile-per-hour crossover exists in the first place in a 95-mile-per-hour zone. Nick, back to you. Trains are running through here as they normally do, frequently stopping traffic as they cross King Road. But exactly 1 year ago, tomorrow evening, this was a very different scene. This entire area was glowing red and blue from the flashing lights on police cruisers and fire trucks. Neighbors were gathered outside watching and waiting for answers. And while we now know that Via 92 was speeding, many of those answers we still are waiting for, mainly why? It was here on February 26, 2012, Via 92 flew off the rails as it was switching tracks. The locomotive slammed into a nearby building, killing 3 engineers in the cab and wounding 45 of the 75 passengers in the train's 5 coaches. The Transportation Safety Board was called in to investigate, and on March 1st, after recovering the black box, determined Via 92 was speeding.
I can now confirm that the train entered the crossover from track 2 to track 3 at approximately 67 miles per hour in an area where it was supposed to go at a maximum authorized speed of 15 miles per hour.
At 67 miles per hour, which is 108 kilometers an hour, Via 92 was going 4 times the permitted speed to cross from one track to another. But without a voice recorder or video from the locomotive, TSB investigators were left questioning why.
An in-cab voice recording would record all activity in the cab of the locomotive.
At head office in Gatineau, TSB Regional Manager Rob Johnston tells us investigating without one has been a challenge.
We also didn't have any forward-facing camera or inward-facing camera on the locomotive, so that presented some additional challenges. We had to do a significant amount of testing on the signal system to ensure that it was operating correctly.
But a correctly operating signal system would have indicated to the engineers to slow down. A voice recorder would have helped determine who was driving, why the train sped up before the crash, and why no brakes were applied. After previous derailments, the TSB has recommended Transport Canada require voice recorders on trains. The recommendations have yet to be implemented, but Transport Canada says they remain under consideration. The Transportation Safety Board said it had field investigators right here at the site of the crash up until October. They say they won't be ready to release any of their findings until the summer at the earliest, but they are in the initial stages of drafting their report.
After we completed the field phase, draft report, multiple reviews out for designated reviewers, and then back to us for another go-around through the report.
While the TSB's findings haven't been made public yet, Bogda Minda, whose business Eurofix backs onto the tracks, says he's noticed immediate changes in passing trains.
After the crash, for a couple months, they were going really slow. You could see the drastic difference in, like a change in the speed.
Minda says for about 2 months, trains would crawl by at 20 kilometers an hour as crews inspected the tracks.
A few months after that, I think it just went back to normal.
On Friday, our radar guns clocked another Via train crossing King Road at 108 kilometers per hour. While that's the same pace as Via 92 was going, it's well under the speed limit for a train not changing tracks. And 1 year later, as many trains continue to safely speed through that stretch of track, investigators still haven't explained why Via 92 did not. I spoke to one of the brothers of the engineers. He's seen a draft of the report, and he says he believes that investigators might never conclusively know what led to that tragedy. I'll have more from him coming up later on in the newscast, as well as more from 2 passengers who were on the train that say their lives were changed that day. Nick?
You can imagine they were, Melissa. Just before you go right now, though, has Via Rail said anything about this investigation now 1 year later?
Nick, we did reach Via Rail, but they declined to comment, saying that they're waiting for the Transportation Safety Board's final report. And as I mentioned earlier on, that report could be made public as early as this summer.
Melissa Raftis joins us live once again from Burlington. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Nick. Out of the 75 passengers on board, 45 were injured, and all 3 engineers at the front of the locomotive were killed. Earlier on this week, I caught up with the brother of one of the victims, as well as a Kingston couple who were in the very next car. They say they're lucky to be alive. 56-year-old Ken Simmons, 52-year-old Peter Snar, and 40-year-old Patrick Robinson were in the cab of the locomotive when Via 92 jumped the tracks. The crash took the lives of all 3 engineers.
What do you remember from that day?
My mom calling me. Yeah. That was sad. So she asked me to call him because he would always answer his cell phone. So, oh, sorry.
Take your time.
The first events have all been hard, but now the anniversary's harder.
Patrick's brother Ken Robinson says this has been a difficult 12 months for the family. He describes Patrick as a great dad to Logan and Amanda, his 2 kids who are now 11 and 14.
He's missed his energy, his enthusiasm, but as time goes by, we heal.
As the Transportation Safety Board continues to investigate, they've kept in close contact with the families of all 3 engineers, updating them as much as possible on their findings.
I believe that the assumptions are all the same, and I don't think we're ever going to know what really caused this, what happened for them to not expect to switch at that track.
Robinson, who works here in Ottawa, says he doesn't ever expect to get full closure, even when the Transportation Safety Board does release its final report. But down the road in Kingston, Wayne and Susan Easterbrook are looking forward to the TSB's findings. They were in the first car on Via 92, just behind the engine.
I'm here, and we're here. And there's 3 people who aren't, and I still feel bad for their families. Sorry. Yeah, but yeah, no, we're managing.
Susan Easterbrook says she feels lucky to be alive, and by all accounts she is. Her husband Wayne, a Canadian soldier, had just returned from Afghanistan. The couple were on their way home from a trip to Niagara Falls with another couple when Via 92 derailed.
It felt like it hit a bump, and the train came up, and then the train came up a little bit further, and I remember a friend of ours, Brenda, saying, "We're coming off the tracks." And then that's all I remember at that point. I don't remember anything else.
I remember trying to reach up to grab Susan and Craig because they were both right against the window. So as we went over, they started to fly over top of me.
Wayne's military training kicked in. He immediately took action, helping wounded passengers until first responders arrived, something the city of Burlington later recognized him for.
It's a great honor, but I still don't think I did anything that anyone else wouldn't do.
Susan, however, was in much worse condition.
They got me to Hamilton. I had fractured ribs. My lung had collapsed. I had 2 fractured vertebrae in my neck, and my collarbone was broken.
She now has a metal plate across her collarbone and is working to get full range back in her left arm. But it's the psychological impacts that scar the most. Susan says she's now a nervous traveler and has forced herself to try to take the train again.
When we first started, I cried for 30 minutes straight. I was not a fun trip, but.
Susan looks forward to the day she'll once again enjoy taking the train. They're eager to hear the TSB's findings, but even without knowing what caused the derailment, the couple remain positive.
There's only one alternative, right?
Yeah.
So this is the better option.
The Easterbrooks are not part of a class action lawsuit that has been taken out against Via by some of the passengers. They say the company has taken care of them since the accident and that they do believe that it was that. They do believe it was an accident. Nick?
All right, Melissa, but is Via doing anything to mark the anniversary at all or even honor the victims?
Yes, Nick, tomorrow they will be honoring the victims at a private memorial in Mimico at their maintenance facility. Some union members as well as other employees are expected to attend. 2 of the 3 families of the victims are also expected to attend as the victims' names will be added to a monument. Back to you.